G'day fellow flight simmers and random YouTubers. Well, today's video is going to be different from the normal format that I normally do. The last video I remember at the end of the video I asked if people wanted to ask me questions. So this video is more about questions and answers sort of session. And I got a question from a young bloke, and I'll just open it up and I'll just read it out to you. And he says he wanted to know about the order of when to issue circuit direction. Do they still need to be issued a squawk code or be given a VFR squawk code 1200 for circuits? So this is from a young guy. He's got his S2 rating, and he's sort of a little bit unfamiliar with that. I understand about airspace release, also about extending downwind and ways to delay circuit traffic. If for a touch and go, does an aircraft have to report airborne, or if there's any traffic on the runway awaiting takeoff clearance? So I would love to see a video from the ATC perspective. I'm tower, so it's more relevant to me, but it'd be good to watch your vid and compare my knowledge, which isn't thorough, to yours. Thank you very much. Okay, so he knows obviously a little bit about me. In another life, I was air traffic control in the Air Force, but that was a long time ago. Okay, so the first thing, and I'll see if I can address the interesting part about that question is he's probably learnt the harder stuff and the actual question that he asked is really the normal stuff. Okay, so I'll tackle. I'll break down my answer into several sections. Now, the first question he said about the order of when to issue circuit direction. Okay, the first thing I need to alert people is that in a VATSIM environment, because it's a virtual environment, sometimes the boundaries of what is real and what is unreal gets blurred. Now, what I mean by that is that, for example, and I know VATSIM, in the VATSIM environment, we try to emulate real-world operations, whatever, as close as possible. However, sometimes that's not necessarily, or that's not really possible. And what I mean by that is, for example, let's say if you're operating Melbourne Tower and somebody wants to do circuits. Well, in the real world, they would laugh at you because you're not allowed to do circuits in Melbourne International. Melbourne International is only for getting passengers in and getting passengers out. It wasn't built, and doesn't serve as a training base. However, because we operate in the VATSIM environment, and this is only my opinion, this is not documented anywhere, I think we as controllers have the flexibility to say whether circuits, if you're controlling Melbourne Tower, you have the flexibility of saying if circuits are either available or unavailable. And what I mean by that is, for example, let's say our busiest night of the week is without doubt Milk Run Monday. And that gets very, very busy, and I know for a fact it's happened to me. Some guys will rock up. Now, whether they do it naively because they don't realise it's Milk Run Monday, or there's some guy in Kentucky and he sees, 2 o'clock in the morning, he's up and he's bored and he sees it Melbourne Tower and he'd like to talk to a controller. So he rocks up and unbeknownst to him, it's Milk Run Monday and he wants to do circuits. Well, I think you, in that case, have the ability to say, look, circuit's unavailable due traffic. And I know that I did that one day to a young bloke who I had him sitting on the taxiway because to me he was going to be my last preference, actually, and he actually ran out of fuel. So that's how long I kept him on there. But that's another matter. So anyhow, you have the option, I think. Now, if it's a Tuesday or Wednesday night and there's no traffic, by all means, you can offer a circuit. Now, how do I know that? Well, first of all, how do I know that Melbourne doesn't do circuits? Oh, and then also from an economical point of view, you don't do circuits in Melbourne because every time you do a landing, you get slugged. And if you're doing touch and goes, it's a very, very expensive exercise. Anyhow, I'll show you the documentation. If you go to Air Services Australia and you scroll down, you agree, and you go to what they call the en route supplement, the 17th of June, we'll go 9th of September, and you go down here and you look at these FACs. Now, I don't know what I should know what FAC means. If you know what FAC means, please tell me. So if I go down and I'll scroll down to Melbourne, we'll get there, Melbourne, probably went past it. Okay, Melbourne, and we click on that, and we see this lovely circular, I guess it's a circular if you want to call it, and it gives you a lot of interesting facts. So, the thing is, if you scroll down here, you keep scrolling down, now, parking, I saw it here the other day. Just bear with me. It is one line and one line only, and I knew this would happen. But if you could... Okay, training. If you have a look at that, under training and survey, training circuits are not permitted. So there it is in black and white. So I think you as an air traffic controller have the discretion of saying, look, due traffic circuits aren't. But there is no documentation. This is my own personal view. So that's one thing. Now let's say if you do, and it is a Tuesday or Wednesday, and some guy just wants to hear somebody's voice saying, clear to land, clear touch and go, clear to land, clear touch and go. Whatever, some people get off on these things, who knows. Anyhow, first thing, if you're going to issue circuits, or if you are going to provide circuits for anybody, the first thing you need to do is understand, well, what's a circuit height? Now, ICAO issues the circular, and basically, if the person is if you have a look at medium performance, includes most piston engine aircraft and gliders, the standard circuit height is 1,000 foot above the aerodrome elevation. Now we know that Melbourne, in this case, the elevation is 434 feet, I think, if that rings a bell. If you go up here, it'll tell you. Elevation 434. So if you've allowed this guy to do circuits, basically he can do circuits at 1434, say 1500. You're not going to. So So basically, you've got to know what circuit height are you going to issue the clearance to operate circuits. Now, let's take one step back. Before you can do circuits, you have to know that is the person able to do circuits? In other words, will there be VMC criteria or conditions for him to fly visual? And now you may think to yourself, well, that's obvious. Well, I've been doing this a long time, and you could get some VATSIS or VATSIM, let's just say, shows you things which you wouldn't believe in a million years, but they do happen. I had a young guy come on, and it was a real bad day in Melbourne, and the skies were overcast at 1800. And this guy wanted to do circuits, and he said, he's a young kid, 15, 14, 12, I don't know how old he was, and he said, I want to do circuits. I said, well, sorry, VMC conditions aren't in operation, or aren't is not VMC conditions. And he said, but I got clear skies. And I thought, okay, the kid obviously hasn't got real world weather. And so, yeah, I had to go to great lengths to explain to him how the old system works. So he was completely, he didn't have a clue what was going on. So the first thing, and this is things you have to memorize, you have to understand. Now, obviously, this is VMC conditions for Class C, Class Charlie airspace. In other words, what's at Melbourne. And it changes for different classes of airspace. I won't go into it because it changes for Class D and it changes for Class G. And so this is primarily for Class C. And you can see here that the aircraft has to be at least 1,500 metres cleared cloud horizontal and 1,000 foot clear of horizontal or vertically, sorry, and there has to be a visibility of at least 5,000 metres. So if you've got broken cloud around the aerodrome at 1,200, there's a fair chance it's not VMC conditions, because he's going to, at 1,400, you're going to be flying 1,500, you're going to be flying through those clouds, and you can't, as you see here, you can't go anywhere near clouds. You have to be well and truly clear of cloud. So even though you might say, but I can see the air, yeah, you probably can, but you're going to be flying through cloud. And that split second you hit a cloud, and for 5 seconds you lose sight of the aerodrome, technically you're not in VMC conditions. So you, as an air traffic controller, have to know and memorise the VMC conditions at different airports or different classes of airspace. So that's another thing. So before you actually issue the circuit, look at the weather and say, well, look, mate, look, Sonny, you can't do because VMC conditions do not exist. Okay, so that's the other thing you have to... All right, so assuming that the VMC conditions exist, and now you allowed this person to do circuits at Melbourne International. Okay, now the other question that young bloke says, he says, do they still need to be issued a squawk code or be given VFR squawk code 1200 for circuits? Okay, so the first thing, the reason why you give a squawk code is for identification purpose, and it's to positively identify aircraft, and the aircraft gets a data tag on his radar. Now, in the real world, as you would imagine, they would look out the town, they could look at the aircraft, so they don't need to have any squawk codes because they'll know that this guy's doing circuits and he's downwind and there he is crosswind and that. But in VATSIS, of course, we don't look out our window, we look at a screen. So we basically get this. So you would be looking at your screen and you would, oh, by the way, yes, you would probably issue 1200 and you would see a data tag like that. And then attached to that data tag, you would see it's a Cessna 172 or whatever aircraft, and it'd be a limited information. But long as you know what type of aircraft he is, and he's a VFR, and where he is, and you can see that on your radar scope, that's all you need to do. Long as he's squawking that, and you can see him, and you can see where he is in the circuit, that's basically what you have to do. Now, this young bloke also goes on, he says, if for touch and go, does an aircraft have to report airborne if there's traffic on the runway awaiting takeoff clearance? Okay. Normally, if let's say, for example, it's a Tuesday and if I allow circuits, I always give the circuit direction because at Melbourne, as I specified, you really can't do circuits. But if, for example, you have allowed this guy to do circuits, and let's say the operational runway is runway 16. Now, most of the SIDs taking off from the runway, they do a right-hand turn. From runway 16, they do right-hand turns, basically. So normally I issue circuit direction opposite to which way the SID is going. So let's say, for example, I've got this Cessna 172 and he's taken off, and I've got this jet behind him. I don't let him, I let the Cessna, I say, basically, I issue directions for him to do left-hand circuits, opposite to what the SID is. In other words, Alpha Bravo Charlie, contact me downwind, runway 16, clear for takeoff, make left turn. Okay? So that's basically, I've just got to pause here for a second.
The police will be up on your doorstep. That's what I think anyway.
Okay, sorry about that. I was interrupted on the phone call, and you probably heard my wife say something, I'm not sure. But anyhow, so yeah, as I was saying, you basically, when you're issuing circuit directions, or you always go opposite to what the actual SID is. Now, if he says, if for a touch and go, does an aircraft have to report airborne if there's traffic on the runway awaiting takeoff clearance? Well, basically, the aircraft, what you do, you tell the aircraft to report mid downwind with intentions. So, yeah, so basically, and then of course, I'm not exactly sure what he means. If a touch and go, does an aircraft have to report airborne if there's traffic on the runway takeoff clearance? Okay, I think I know what he means. Yes, basically, one of the standards of in tower control is basically there are different criteria that if an aircraft has taken off, when can you give a clearance for the second aircraft? And one of those criteria, as soon as the first aircraft has made a turn. So as soon as the VFR aircraft has made the turn onto his circuit, let's say he's taken off upwind and he makes the turn, and he goes into the crosswind leg, you can effectively make the aircraft, or tell the aircraft he's clear of takeoff. So that's basically it. As soon as the first aircraft has made his turn. I think, and then of course, as I say, then later on you just tell the aircraft in the circuit, report me downwind with intentions, and then you take it from there. So I hope, I think that's basically the extent of his questions. Yeah, and I think that basically covers all of it. I hope the young bloke, I won't mention his name of course, but I hope that satisfies his questions, and until next time, I'll see you all later. Cheers.